Wipe the sleep out of the old eyeballs here. Get the day started. Welcome, one and all, to this Sunday edition of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I am Dan Bespris, and you can find me on social media at Dan Bespris. I know, tough, at DANBESBRIS. We do a lot of stuff over on Twitter, and it's almost maybe underselling a tiny bit. We do an extraordinary and perhaps slightly psychopathic amount on social media. You can also follow the network feed at Old Man Squad. That's where all the episodes go out, and that's where you can get introduced to the amazing other hosts that are part of the Old Man Squad Sports Network. There's like 30 people that are working with us now. It's really amazing. Like, truly unbelievable. So follow at Old Man Squad on social media. Follow Dan Vespers. And please take a moment, hit that like button if you're watching. If you're not watching, if you're listening, please subscribe. Actually, I guess you could do that if you're watching too. And the 5-star review, especially over on Apple Podcasts, if you guys are happening to take it in over there. We got to pick up the pace on those reviews. Spotify reviews are coming in nice so far. Today, we're talking the Philadelphia 76ers on the show. This is our fourth to last. I don't know if there's a word for that. I know we got ultimate and penultimate. What's fourth to last term? Pre-antepenultimate. Okay, so it goes ultimate, penultimate, antepenultimate, and then pre-antepenultimate. That means fourth to last. This is the pre-antepenultimate season preview episode of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. See, we all learned something today. Even if you don't learn anything from my 76ers preview, you learned something from that. To those that are watching on YouTube, I was told it would be smart to have some music just playing very softly in the background. I think it's extraordinarily soft right now. I'm trying to keep it like crazy level low, but it's apparently because people are like, Dan, you take these long pause breaks to breathe or take a sip of water or whatever, and we don't know if our internet glitched out. So now you'll know. Now you know on YouTube. You could also just look and see that I'm like taking a sip of water, but whatever. I'm here to please. I'm here to please. So the 76ers had a very busy offseason. Arguably the busiest offseason of any team in the frickin' NBA. But, of course, the big one was Paul George. So a lot of what we're going to talk about with this thing hovers around PG and what he means to this team going forward, but not everything. And that's the thing. The loss of Tobias Harris and then the inclusion of Paul George is kind of an interesting, weird little subplot because they dropped their starting power forward but brought in more of a shooting guard, small forward type. So now you kind of get into the weeds a little bit more. And it's like, okay, well, where do the minutes go at each spot? Because, you know, Kelly Oubre played 30 minutes a game last year, and Buddy Hield was there, and DeAnthony Melton was there, and Paul Reed, by the way, who's also gone. But, like, speaking of the guards and wings, that's where the Paul George minutes come from. It was Buddy Hield's 18 minutes a game. It was DeAnthony Melton's 15 to 20 minutes a game or more when he was healthy. It was Hield's 26 when nobody else was around. It was Oubre's 30. Like, you roll all that together, you're talking about some 70-odd, and, you know, the health of Melton being a big part of it. But, like, towards the end of the season, Hield playing minutes in the teens, near 20, Oubre 20-some-odd. That's the Paul George minutes. The Tobias Harris minutes are going somewhere else. So that's what we're going to be exploring for the most part on today's episode, is not so much where do the Paul George minutes come from, but rather where are the Tobias Harris minutes going? And Oubre's still there, by the way. It's important to note that Kelly's still there. It's just that he's not going to be doing as much as last year. So it's not like his 30 minutes go directly to Paul George, but 5 or 6 from him, you know, 20 Buddy Hield minutes. Like, that's where it's coming from. Nick Batum is gone. He was playing 20-ish minutes down the stretch. There was a lot of turnover. The other key names, so the key name situation, it's probably important to do a little bit of a key name thing for the 76ers. Key names out were DeAnthony Melton, Buddy Hield, Tobias Harris, Nick Batum. Those are the guys who played significant minutes that are on the way out. You could also throw Mo Bamba and Paul Reed into that mix as far as the backup center goes, but that's been addressed with Andre Drummond. That's an easy one, and we'll talk about him on today's show as well. I've been, right up until this very moment, I don't really know the best or most organized way to work through the 76ers, but it is important to know how much change there was. So we can kind of ignore last year a little bit, because for the 76ers, of their top 7 fantasy performers on a per game basis, Harris, Melton, Hield, Reed are all gone. 4 of the top 7 are gone. The 3 that remain are Embiid, Maxey, and Oubre. Let's start with Joel Embiid. That's sort of the easiest one. Is Paul George going to take some of what Embiid did? What Embiid did when he was healthy? Yeah, some. But no one's really all that worried about what Embiid's going to do on a per-game basis. He's going to be a top 3 dude in fantasy when he's playing. Everybody's concerned about how many games he's going to play. And the honest-to-goodness answer to how do we figure out or have any idea how many games he's going to play is we don't know. We'd like to say we know, but we don't know. He could play 30-something again. He could play 50-something. Probably if you're going strong probabilistic models here, you point at Embiid and you're like, odds are he's going to play somewhere in the 50s, but it's probably more likely that he goes above that than below it. So maybe you say something like 62 to 65 games is your expectation, and then you account for 5 to 6 on either side of that. Maybe he gets up as high as 67 in a perfect universe. Maybe he drops as low as 56 in a less perfect universe. That's kind of your confidence interval, but we're not all that confident. The P value is terrible because we don't know. We just don't know. But if you're running the numbers on it, and you should, because ultimately that's kind of the way it works, and fantasy should have a games cap, even if public head-to-head leagues won't. Josh's head-to-head leagues will. Embiid, this past season, in only 39 ball games, because he was so good on a per-game basis, he played less than half the season, and he still, by totals, was a late 4th rounder. What would it take Joel Embiid, because he's generally going around pick 9 in fantasy drafts, at least the ones that we've seen so far. What would it take Joel Embiid to get a 9th rank by totals if he's top 3 on a per game basis? Well, we can't say exactly, but it's fair to say, looking kind of at past seasons, things like Kawhi Leonard, not this past season, but the previous one was kind of a good example of that. He played in 52 games as a top, what the hell was he? No, it wasn't that year. It was 21-22, I think. Right? Where was Kawhi? Let me find the last year. Okay, this is bad podcasting, but we're going to make sure we get it right. It was the 72 game season. So Kawhi missed 20 games that year. He was number 6 per game, and he was still number 9 by totals. So basically what we're saying here is, and again, remember that was a 72 game season, so him playing 52 games would be very different than Embiid playing 52. If Joel Embiid plays 62 games this year, he likely beats his ADP, because Kawhi Leonard missed 20 games, and I get it, the number of games played per player is just a little bit higher the last one season as opposed to the COVID year. There was a lot of missed ball games that season. Now, average missed games is back up to 12 instead of 14, but fuzzy mathing that part just a little bit. If Embiid gets into the 60s in games played, he likely beats his ADP on both per game and totals basis. So that's kind of the game plan there. But I get it. If you're in a head-to-head league and you're like, I know this guy's going to miss 20 ball games. I don't know when they're going to be exactly, but if they fall during my fantasy playoffs, I'm doomed. If they fall during my fantasy regular season, am I going to be able to get to the playoffs? The answer should be yeah, because he's getting to his mark. He's just simply doing enough when you aggregate all of his stuff to be a positive. So I'm into Joel Embiid at pick number 9, where he's going. I think he beats that in both per game and totals, which means I'm actually kind of comfortable doing it in head-to-head also. Even if there's a slight drop-off, because, 22 shots and 11, 12 free throws a game, that's too many. That's too much for him when he has now 2 other really good offensive options. And we're talking about Tyrese Maxey as one of the other very good offensive options. He was number 21 last year. 26 points, 4 boards, 6 assists. I'm rounding. 3 3-pointers, a steal, and half a block. 45% shooting on very high volume, and 87% at the free throw line on kind of decent volume. But, and by the way, this isn't to take anything away from Tyrese Maxey. A lot of his numbers this past year were kind of confused a bit because of Joel Embiid's absence. Tyrese Maxey, believe it or not, was actually playing better when Joel Embiid was there. It's a weird thing to try to reconcile in our brains. His assists were higher when Embiid was there. His scoring was basically the same. Like you would have thought that he'd be taking 1 billion extra shots per ball game, but that wasn't really the case. His field goal attempts went up from 20 to basically 21. Now, some of Maxey's drop in the ranks, early in the year, Tyrese was ranked like 14, 15, and then he dropped it down to about pick 20 by the end of it all. A lot of that was just other guys that started slowly that ended up pushing in front of him by the end of the season. Not all of it, but some of it. Like, so if you're looking at, let's see, are we looking at totals now, or are we looking at per game? All right, let's flip this around just a little bit. I had totals up on one board and per game up on the other. So Maxey's rank didn't change all that much. Ever so slightly, I guess you could say down by a couple of slots. But again, that's just mostly guys moving around in front of him. Like Devin Booker moved in front. Jason Tatum moved in front of him. There were a few guys that just moved up that you kind of knew were going to move up and hadn't yet. I think Kawhi Leonard might have even been one of them who started off kind of slowly this last year. So the interesting thing is that when Embiid went down, Tyrese Maxey's job didn't change all that much. It seems crazy. I know. You would have thought, oh, Embiid goes down, Maxey's going to take 9,000 shots per game. Not really. Again, his shots went from 20 to 21. His per game value was lower with Embiid out because his assists dropped from 7 to a little under 6. Everything else stayed almost exactly the same, but assists went down. Where the hell did all the shots go is a question we should all be asking ourselves. Where did they go? Mostly Kelly Oubre, oddly enough. A lot of Kelly Oubre took the Joel Embiid stuff. I think I just caught that moth. Moth flying through the screen while I'm trying to do a podcast. No respect at all. So, while I will say that I am slightly down on Maxey this year, his pre-rank is 19, his ADP is 23.3 on Yahoo as of yesterday. I don't think he's falling as far as, well, maybe there's, I don't know what the consensus is on how far he's going to fall. I think it's only going to be a little bit. He's going to have to give something up to Paul George. So don't worry too much about the Joel Embiid impact. If you were looking at it, you're like, oh, but Maxey, he was top 20 last year, but that was because he played half the season without Joel Embiid. No, actually, he was top 20 both sides. Better with Embiid than without him. Tobias Harris's shots are now up for grabs. Some of Kelly Oubre's are up for grabs. Buddy Hield's are up for grabs. Nick Batum's very few shots are up for grabs. D'Anthony Melton's very few shots. All this stuff is up for grabs. Paul George can get a lot of his usage from collecting small amounts from the other guys. However, a little will come from Embiid and Maxey. It just has to. And if it doesn't, then Paul George is the guy who takes a steep drop, which I don't think that happens either. So speaking of Paul George, who we should probably include him in this discussion of kind of the new Philly big three, PG last year was at 17 shots per game. He was number 12 by averages on 22.5 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists, 3.3 threes, 1.5 steals, half a block. 47-91 were the splits. Really good numbers for Paul George. Really, really efficient year. Steals being nice was solid. And the field goal percent seeing a nice uptick. That's something that I'm hoping we see continue here. Playing alongside Embiid and Maxey should free him up a little bit. Not that there's, James Harden will be the best point guard that Paul George plays with during this 1 to 2 year very limited sample size we're talking about. And did that have something to do with his efficiency uptick? I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, by, third, fourth month of this season. But you can't help but wonder, can PG get to 17 shots a game with Embiid and Maxey both healthy? My guess is probably not. But again, we're trying to size up what's the drop-off. At what point is drafting these guys a good or bad idea? PG's pre-rank is 26. His ADP is 29.2. I will happily take Paul George near 30. Happily. That's a big, big buffer against last year. Do we think he drops 2 full rounds? Maybe. But who cares? You draft him at 30, he finishes at 36? That's fine. That's break even. If you're within a handful and a pinky of where you drafted a guy, that's just break even money on him. And a lot of times, breaking even on your picks is a win. Because we've talked about it 1,000 times on the show. You can lose your fantasy league in the first 2 or 3 rounds. You can't really win it. You win your fantasy league by not screwing up the first couple rounds and getting hits in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, basically. Sometimes 9th, 10th, 11th. They happen. They're very rare, but they happen. That's how you win a fantasy league. Don't screw up the beginning. Paul George is a don't screw up pick. If he's there for you in the middle of the 3rd round, take Paul George. You don't have to feel excited about it because he's probably not going to be top 12 again. He's probably not going to be top 18 again. But he might be top 30. And if you take him at 30 and you're like, well, worst case scenario, this dude is like number 37. That's fine. Tyrese Maxey is the one of the big 3 that I would say I'm most nervous about because he's not really going at a discount. The other 2 are. Embiid's at an injury discount. Paul George is on a new situation discount. Maxey is being drafted exactly where he finished last season, which is not a discount. Because last season was kind of a best case scenario for him. He had Embiid and he was rolling mega efficient for half a year. And then he didn't have Embiid, and he got to do a little bit more. Not a lot, but a little bit more. Everything was coming up Tyrese last season, other than, efficiency when Embiid was down. You take stuff away from him, he shouldn't be getting drafted exactly where he finished last year. There's just no way that his situation improves. That's kind of what we're looking at here. There's no way, frankly, that any of the 3 players involved in this sort of big 3, any of their situation improves. But with 2 of them, Embiid and PG, they're going cheap. So with those 2 guys, the question we're all asking ourselves leading up to fantasy draft night is, have they been discounted too much? With Maxey, no such question exists. The question right now is, why isn't there a discount? If Yahoo Board Shuffle moves Maxey into a discounted position, okay, I'll rethink it. But right now, he's not. So I don't see the reason to rethink it. All right, that's the most interesting stuff from Philly is the big 3. What about the other? Because you got Embiid, you got Maxey, you got Paul George. Those guys are going to be playing big minutes and soaking up most of the usage. But there are still a couple spots unaccounted for. They ran Kyle Lowry as the main point guard once he got there, and he's back. And there's kind of every reason to believe that he still will be the main point guard with Maxey at the 2 PG at the 3. We haven't discussed question mark at the 4, and Joel Embiid at the 5. By the way, quick thoughts on Andre Drummond before we get into what's happening with the rest of the 1 through 4 minutes and usage. Andre Drummond is going to be really fun to roster in a games cap format, because you're not going to want to start him when Embiid is healthy, and you're going to want to start him immediately any time Joel gets a day off. And believe me, they'll happen. We just talked about, we expect Embiid to miss 20 ball games this year. Those 20 games, Andre Drummond can roll top 50. When Embiid was out last season, not Embiid, sorry, when, was it Vooch? Vooch missed a handful of games. Not many. Kind of wish it was more for Andre Drummond's sake. I say Embiid. When, I get ahead of myself because Philly offered Chicago some goodies for, Drummond last year at the trade deadline. They didn't do it, and then they lost him to Philly for nothing in the offseason. Derp. Chicago front office. Vooch missed 6 games last year, so there weren't that many opportunities for Drummond to go nuts. But during those 6, it was like a week. He averaged, I think, 17 rebounds. I don't think I'm making that up. I feel like that's a number that I saw and was like, oh, I should remember that number. So that could legitimately happen. Andre Drummond could average 15-plus rebounds for the likely 3 to 4 weeks or more that, I guess more, 5 weeks probably that Embiid is out this year. I don't know when they're going to happen. You could leave Drummond on the wire and hope that you're fastest to him when word drops that Embiid is getting a rest day or he's have nagging injuries and he's going to miss a week or whatever. But if you're in a games cap format, 14th, especially if your draft goes past 13 rounds, because round 13, you might still have a shot at somebody who's going to have value to begin the year. 14th, 15th round, those guys just aren't there anymore. Those are crap rounds. Take Drummond, squat on him in a games cap. I'm good with that. But I don't think I want to use a pick inside. Maybe the 13th round is okay, but I don't think I'd want to use a pick inside the top 130, 135. I'm still able to get some guys that I kind of like in that range, such as the players we discussed on Friday's Deep Flyer episode, also titled Sleepers, because otherwise nobody looks for it. I hate that we got to do that, but I got to do it, so sorry. Mid-show reminder before we get to the power forward situation to please hit that like, subscribe button, and follow on Twitter at Dan Vespers and at Old Man Squad. Got to hit you guys with that a couple times per show. Okay. I don't care that Eric Gordon is in Philadelphia now. He's going to soak up some backup shooting guard minutes. I don't care that Reggie Jackson's there. Even if he starts over Kyle Lowry, I don't care that Reggie Jackson's there because his fantasy game is wiggity whack, as the kids say. Reggie Jackson needs maximum usage to get anywhere near the edge of the top 100. You need to be punting steals, field goal percent, turnovers, maybe even threes. His game is not close to fantasy relevant. The only thing left, and by the way, sorry, Kelly Oubre Jr., you're also kind of on the outside looking in. Philly has a lot of these wingy dudes, but not the big kind. And that's why the power forward spot is kind of intriguing, because the only bigger wings left on the roster that feel like they have a legitimate shot at an opportunity. They did just sign Yabusele, who came over from Team France. I think it was with Real Madrid. Maybe he gets into the mix. I don't know. But KJ Martin and Caleb Martin, no relation, are kind of the guys you can point at and say, these dudes probably have the body profile to actually soak up the power forward minutes. And my guess, based on mostly contract, is that Caleb Martin is going to get the first crack at it. So then we move to, should we care? I would lean towards no. You'll see Caleb Martin go off the board in some deeper leagues. He's probably going to sit around number 200, would be my guess. You can look at what he did in Miami this last year. He played 27.5 minutes per game, so it wasn't like he was just getting backup clunker minutes. He played a significant role on that team, and he was number 209. in 10 points, 4.5 boards, 2 assists, 1.2 combined defensive stats, 1.3 threes on 43% shooting and 78 at the free throw line. So not very good. That was on a team with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, who missed most of the season. I mean, the Heat were really banged up last year, including Caleb Martin, who only played 64 out of 82 games. And still, he couldn't really carve out a consistent role. 9 shots ain't enough. And he's going to a place where there are everyone on the roster is ahead of him in the pecking order. So I would say probably just don't worry about the Philly power forward spot. It's possible that someone wins it outright. I think the only thing that would jump into my mind is what if this thing ends up as very much a open competition and like old as dirt Rob Covington came in and won it, because I'm pretty sure he's on the Sixers right now, unless I have my rosters screwballed here. He might be there. Or like, what if KJ Martin ended up winning that job? I would at least give these guys a glance. Because Covington, how could he possibly? I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're wasting our breath, and I think we're wasting our energy. It's probably going to be Caleb Martin for like 25, 26 minutes, and they're going to flex other bodies in there, and they're going to run small with Paul George at power forward at times, and a Paul George small forward will be Eric Gordon with Maxey and Lowry still out there, and then there'll be times that they'll run a little bigger. But it's just not going to be enough. Like, none of these guys is going to consistently play 32, 33 minutes a ball game. It's just not going to happen. Kelly Oubre will play some power forward, as insane as that sounds. It'll happen. They're just going to mix and match a little bit. But Caleb Martin's the guy they brought in. That was a target for them. So he's going to get first crack at it. His fantasy game is not that good. There was hope. I know I hoped over the years. You watched him, you were like, you know what, this guy, the outlines are there, but you kind of needed like Butler and Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero. Like, everybody had to be out for the Heat for Caleb Martin to ever go, you know what, I'm going to take 11 shots today instead of 8. Maybe it happens. You know, Paul George, Joel Embiid, maybe they're both down, but the guy that's going to grab all those shots is freaking Kelly Oubre. It's not going to be Caleb Martin. There's like no universe where he takes a dozen shots in a ball game. It'll happen a couple of times throughout the year. And that's it. And in those games, we're going to be like, oh, damn. Because he'll go 7 for 12, and there'll be 5 3-pointers. It'll be like a 15-point, 5 3-pointer, 5 rebound, 3 assists, 2 steal game. And we're going to go, hey. And then the next game is going to be Turd City. And we move on. And we're talking about full season values here at this point. We want full season production, and you just ain't going to get it. Recap of the 76ers. Joel Embiid at 9 is a perfectly reasonable value. Paul George near 30 is a perfectly reasonable value. Tyrese Maxey near 20 is not discounted for reasons we don't fully understand. Kyle Lowry, I do not want. Kelly Oubre, I do not want. Caleb Martin, I do not want. And Andre Drummond is a handcuff, meaning games, cap, keep him on your bench, deploy when Embiid is down. Don't play him all year in a head-to-head format with unlimited games, because he's going to end up ranked outside the top 200 because his free throw percent is so freaking god-awful, and the minutes are just not going to be consistent enough, and 8 points and 9 rebounds is just, it sounds good on paper. The 9 rebounds sound good, but, 16 minutes a game is just not enough. Not when you're a punt free throw guy. There has to be more there. By the way, if you're looking at last season, Andre Drummond obviously gets a big bump without free throws, still ranked outside the top 130. And it's going to be worse when Embiid is healthy. Joel is going to play more minutes per game, probably, than Vooch did on average. And they actually tried to play those guys together for a stretch in Chicago. That ain't happening in Philly. They're not going Twin Towers. That's way too much mass out on a basketball court. Bulls were just trying stuff, blindfolded dart throws. Drummond at 8 points and 8.5 rebounds with 0.9 steals. It's not enough. But Drummond during fill-in time, oh my, on, 11 points, 15 rebounds, 1.5 steals, and a block. And if you're punting free throws on top of that, holy mackerel. Even if you're not, that's the play on Drummond. All right, folks, thanks for watching. That was your Philadelphia 76ers preview. We only have 3 teams left. The Raptors and the 2 teams from Nueva York, Knicks and Nets. Those will probably be next weekend unless something insane happens during the week and I'm like, oh no, I didn't have a chance to get a mock draft going or whatever. But more than likely, we'll do it over the weekend. Basically, anytime that I have an open show slot during the weeks right now, it's going to be a mock draft because I want to get through. We've done a Jokic build and we've done an Anthony Davis build, meaning we've got, technically you got 10 more draft slots, but like 6, 7, 8 maybe other foundational pieces that we want to go over. Wemby, Shea, Luka, Giannis. Those are easily the 4 that everybody wants to hear about. Trey, Halliburton. Steph build? We did a guest show with a Steph build, but I guess we could do it ourselves. Is there such thing as a Tatum and or Kevin Durant build? It's a little more well-rounded. Who am I forgetting in there? It's probably somebody. A Sabonis build? An Anthony Edwards build? No, thank you. Tomorrow, Monday, as they say, we're going to talk to Alex Barutha on the show. I think he's making his first appearance. Or maybe did we have Alex on Fantasy NBA Today like 4 years ago? Possible. In any event, that'll be a lot of fun. Very excited to get Alex back on the show. Hold on a minute. Let me make sure I get this right. I think this is, again, bad podcasting, but I got to check something. Yeah, he had the 7th pick in Josh's mock from last week, or a week and a half ago, I guess it was now. And he had Halliburton, so that'll be a chance to talk a little bit about the Halliburton build. Beautiful. Beautiful. Other show on Monday, which will come in the afternoon, will be a mock draft. So follow on Twitter at Dan Vespris, because when I'm doing these mocks, I put the link out about 8 minutes before the draft starts. I usually drop into a Yahoo 12-team mock, and I put the link on Twitter because no random goobers have fallen into it yet, and that allows you guys to jump in and mock with me. So that'll probably be the other show on Monday, unless the Yahoo board changes, which it still hasn't. Still the same today on Sunday. Also, I've got a pre-rank and ADP tracker Google sheet that now has ADP data in it. I'll be updating it on Mondays throughout the year. So we'll get an update on that tomorrow. The link is in the show description. Like, rate, and subscribe. At Dan Vespris, at Old Man Squad. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you guys tomorrow.